Hades is one of the best games this year, period. It's one of the games I've played most on my Twitch stream recently, and more importantly, one that has left a big effect on me this year. I'm not a huge fan of roguelike games in general. I absolutely hated the critically acclaimed Splunky 2, and I have almost forgotten games like Binding of Isaac as I get bored quickly. But Hades was different. Hades is the newest game from Supergiant, and it takes the player on an adventure through the depths of hell, all while you talk to the gods of ancient mythology during your stay. In the game, you're tasked with escaping from hell and reaching the surface land with all the gods helping you along the way. And each time you die, you are sent back to your homeworld, the underworld, only to struggle to escape once again, day after day. It's a simple premise, and quite honestly, a fairly simple and straightforward game as well. But everything Hades does, it does with love and care for the craft of game making. And it shows. You probably have heard a lot of folks in the gaming industry recently talking about Hades as a Game of the Year contender. A game that isn't AAA, isn't funded by some enormous studio, and doesn't even have mainstream or large-scale appeal within its genre. So what the hell then is Hades, and what makes it such a great game? Well, to start off this discussion, let's talk about radical realization. It's a term Ken Levine, the creator of the BioShock series, coined a few years back at one of his game developer talks. For Levine, radical realization was the idea that a game should respond as frequently as possible to what the player is doing in the world, and as to as meaningful an extent as possible. Levine correctly identified that one of the aspects that separates games from other mediums of entertainment is their ability to react to what the player is doing, instead of the other way around.
And so one of the most important things about what we're doing now is this concept of radical recognition, like in Mordor, that if the player does something, the game should, as often as we can, recognize that accomplishment or failure or whatever it is, and find ways to have the world feedback that it cares. So I thought that was a great system.
And this is where the discussion about Hades should begin. Because you see, in Hades, it isn't like a lot of other roguelike games. There are different types of enemies, different weapons to bring to battle, and a myriad of special abilities to unlock. And every time you die, you start right back at where you started, only to hit the pedantic treadmill once again. But the real genius of Hades is how it throws a wrench into this formula. Because for Hades, the elevator pitch, and what makes the game stand out amongst its peers, is how it radically realizes the player. A staple of the roguelike series for some time now has been giving the player the ability to upgrade themselves in between rounds. That way they can go further with each iteration. But in Hades, they take this one step further. Just like in other games, you can upgrade your gear for future runs, but the thing that makes Hades next level is how it upgrades your narrative in between rounds as well. What I mean by that is that in Hades, the story never truly stops. You don't have to reach certain checkpoints for the story to continue, it simply carries on regardless of what is happening. In most games, and roguelikes specifically, if you die 3 times in quick succession, then you're probably pretty mad and frustrated. But in Hades, it makes this whole process fun. Because in between each journey where you set forth into the depths of hell, you get to come back to your home with Hades, Achilles, and a whole other cast of ancient Greek mythological characters. And each of these characters reacts to what has happened before. After your multitude of losses, your dad and the Lord of the Underworld Hades will probably make fun of you and scold you for your failures. The boss you just died against will likely mock you, and Achilles will inspire you to push forward regardless of their remarks. Each and every character will have something to say about what is going on to you and around you. They will encourage or deter you depending on how they feel about you, but regardless, the more important part is that they do feel about you. Every one of these interactions is expertly written, and as a player, you almost look forward to dying in Hades because then you get to go back to your home base and see what everyone has to say about your last run. This is the sense of radical realization that Ken Levine was alluding to. The sense that no matter what you are doing, whether that be winning or losing, the game and its characters and its world react accordingly. The game doesn't even have failure states in the traditional sense. It simply carries on no matter what the player has done, and the world around you always has something to say about your journey. And this is so much more impactful than people realize. This is what games should be striving to be. For those of you that have played the Mass Effect series, likely one of your favorite parts of the games was after every mission, talking to your crew and hearing their opinions on what happened on your last endeavor. It was cool to hear how your love interest fawned over you and your accomplishments, or just getting the opinion of your teammates on how to keep the story progressing. What makes Hades a great game though, even though it is not a AAA, is that it expands upon this idea by giving you that sense of satisfaction of talking to your crew and teammates, but in a much more dynamic way. In Hades, these lines and interactions are not a linearly determined path that will always happen because missions are playing out in a couple of different ways. Hades takes a more systematic approach to storytelling, where each and every interaction you have with a character matters, and everything you do has an equal and opposite sense of radical realization. In one of your journeys to the outer world, you may make your way all the way to the final boss, your own father Hades. But there you discover your power is too small and you fail to best him, instead dying and casting yourself to the underworld once again. But when you get to the underworld, you notice that Hades isn't there. And that makes sense. Hades has to make his way all the way back through the depths and rings of hell since he was just at the gates of the upper world, and you were simply reborn instantly after your death. So now Hades is gone and you are free to talk to the other characters about your loss against him and why he is gone. The world reacted accordingly to what you did and what happened, and without missing a beat, the story carried on gracefully instead of having to roll back to a save state. And this is truly the most important and revolutionary part of Hades. It's storytelling in a game genre that was, quite honestly, usually devoid of it. And even more interestingly is its ability to tell a story uniquely positioned to be told in games themselves. Only in a game can you feel the sense of satisfaction of making a choice and seeing all of the characters that you have formed bonds with meaningfully react to it. There is a larger story in Hades, one of escaping the underworld. But the true story and the true essence of the game lies in the interactions you have with those around you as you fight your way through waves of enemies. In Hades, it is all about the journey, not the destination. It is about hearing what Zeus has to say about your recent endeavors when you pick up his skill, not the fact that you are getting a 5% increase to your lightning bolt ability. Hades makes you want to stop and care about the world, because the world cares about you. You have a genuine emotional reaction to the characters in the world because they have a genuine emotional reaction to you in the world. And it's not just the storytelling that makes Hades so great. It's how this storytelling and all of its other systems play so well together. The combat in Hades, for example, is amazing in its own right. It's extremely fluid, intuitive, and overall just a blast to play. But what elevates it so much is how it intertwines and intermingles with all of the other systems around it. Like I mentioned before, Hades is a systematically focused game. It doesn't narrow in on how characters are or exactly what the story should be beat for beat, how weapons will work, but instead how the whole package can fit together. For instance, in combat, getting upgrades and new abilities is tied directly to the story of the gods, and their characters interacting with you on a personal level. When you clear hero rooms in Hades, at the end you get to pick up their little hero bubble, which spawns some dialogue talking about your character and what they have recently done, as well as your relationships in terms of that god. And then you get to pick your upgrades. The entire idea itself of upgrading your character is tied to the story and progression of it. Every facet of Hades is carefully considered. Every system is designed with regard to the systems that surround it. And this results in a game that reminds me more of Deus Ex and Sid Meier's Civilization than it does other roguelike games like Splunky and Binding of Isaac. Hades is a game that does have special handcrafted moments. Moments like this one, where you first hear the music on the first level and stop to just take in the atmosphere.
No further debts to be paid, endless careless as weary bones.
The dialogue too is something that is handcrafted. The reason the characters are so lovable, so funny, and so annoyingly awesome is because of how great the writing team behind this game is. But what elevates Hades, and why people are talking about it potentially being the single best game of this year, are the moments that are created by you, not the developer and the writing and music teams. The way in which systems interact in smart ways and the game's propensity to radically react to them is why Hades is so great. Supergiant is a studio that is not afraid to take risks. And Hades is a game that strives to push the boundaries of storytelling and systematic interaction in games. So if I had to sum up why Hades is a great game, and why you should play it if you haven't, it's because more than many of the games before it, it shows why this medium is so special, and what games should truly strive to be. It took a huge risk, one that I can only imagine is extremely hard to pull off, but it passed with flying colors. And for that, it should be lauded. Hopefully this game will inspire future developers, especially those in AAA, to take more risks with storytelling and game systems and usher in the next true next gen of gaming. Because next gen isn't about graphics, 4K, or even 120 hertz. However, I can tell you personally that's a huge difference. It's amazing. It's about finally making games focus on their strengths as a creative medium and creating stories and worlds that could only be experienced by gamers. And Hades is an amazing first step. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.